It was a bright and sunny Monday morning in early July of 1995. Finally, if you want to call it that, another day off. I had worked all afternoon and night the day before, so it was well beyond my bedtime. It was still time for my once-a-week all-day excursion with my daughters and other single-parent children in the neighborhood, which had become a fairly regular habit in recent months. There would be no biking, shooting, or hiking on this particular day. It was going to be a hot day, and there was no opposition to rafting. As I began to list the items that were needed to be gathered for the trip, I remembered that my neighbor had recently acquired a new life vest and offered to lend it to me at any time, so life jackets were added to the list. I promptly ignored the neighbor's generous offer and fought it off again and again, believing that the vest might be scratched or stained. We were unloading my mom's van on the river's boat ramp 3 hours, 6 kids, and 2 rafts later. The 4 adolescent girls, 2 of whom were my kids, joined me in the 8-person raft, leaving the 2 men for our 17-year-old neighbor and his younger brother. We descended the slope and into the river where our journey began. The delightful coolness of the morning had given way to a blazing afternoon, and the cool water was a wonderful respite. Because there were only 4 oars and 5 of us in the enormous raft, I quickly sat on the very front of the raft with my legs hanging over, while each of the girls straddled the side oars in hand, and we were off. We were swiftly dragged out into the main stream by the gals. This is the life, I thought, as I stretched my legs to get my feet in the water. The water was moving much faster when we reached the first curve in the river. I let myself fall backward with a splat against the raft's bottom, leaving the girls to guide us over the rapids, which were not too difficult at the time. The girls did an excellent job of getting us through the first couple of hours on the river, so I continued to ride in the front of the raft with them in control, falling back into the raft as we approached the most difficult sections of the river. Splash! I was in the water, and the current was rapid and fierce. The raft had collided with a boulder barely beneath the surface, leaving me to fend for myself in the most dangerous section of the river yet. So, thinking about how not to be hurt by the stones that were flowing beneath me so quickly, I lay on my back, pointing my feet downstream, trying to float as high in the water as possible. The raft was already several yards behind me, but I'd made it over the worst of it. And now I was in fairly deep water, with the tide slowly pushing me upstream. Because I wasn't in the best of mental shape, having gone 24 hours without sleep, it was too late by the time I realized that moving upstream was a bad idea. I fell under, just catching a breath of air before being gobbled up by the undertow. The enraged water grabbed and yanked at me. I was so close to the surface, yet I couldn't get there. Neither the bottom nor a massive car-sized boulder near me could be touched. It was around this time when the gravity of the situation became clear. I was going to drown, and there was nothing I could do about it. Panic struck, and I battled my way to the surface, using all of the strength my exhausted body had left to fill my lungs with even a single breath of oxygen. But reality soon sank in, and my breath, and even my life, which I had battled so hard to preserve, broke out, leaving me alone in the dark with only a single thought. This is something I'm capable of. It was now quiet. There was no more whirling water, no more terror or dread, no more sensations of any kind. Simply the realization that it was okay to let go of existence. Working 3 jobs and sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night, 5 days a week and not at all the other 2, I reasoned, wasn't much of a life. Then I was standing many feet above the ocean, as if I were a kid and my father had taken me by my Oshkosh overalls and lifted me over his head. I could feel the light warming my face, but it was no longer too bright to look at. The pleasant air felt reassuring. My attention was drawn to the sound it created as it rustled through the brilliant green leaves of a huge tree to my left. My concentration on the tree caused me to feel the breeze sweeping through the leaves as if they were on my fingers, and the tree was a part of me. My senses were all heightened, colors were more vibrant and vision was sharper and more distinct. The scent was delightful, as was the fine mist of water on my skin. A bird began to sing behind me, and as the tune drew my attention, the trees and foliage that had been covering it parted, revealing the small creature. Not only could it be seen and heard, but I also had the impression that the bird was content, even joyful, simply to exist, and this emotion became ingrained in me. Despite the fact that much of what was going on around me was to my left, right, or behind me, I didn't have to turn to see it, because I could see 360 degrees around me and understand a lot of what was going on in my immediate surroundings at the same time. As I stood there in wonder at what was going on, a voice came up to me, clear as the voice of someone very close to me, and asked, "What do you want to do?" Turning my attention back to the scene in front of me, I proceeded to conduct a survey as if it were a test to see what could be done. My youngest daughter was crawling out of the water about 75 yards downstream from the raft. My oldest had already walked 30 to 40 yards upstream along the steep bank. On the other hand, I was here, and my lifeless body was there, which was no problem for me because my previous existence was as much a dream to me as the afterlife is to most of us now. There was no pain or sadness, simply peace and love like few have ever known. After gathering this information, it was as if I simply packaged it in a neat little package, added a touch of no understand, and presented it to the entity that had posed the inquiry. The response was rapid. "What do you want to do?" And the answer was nearly identical to the previous survey. It seemed as if someone had grabbed me and shoved me inside of my eldest daughter, whom I later discovered was attempting to direct the older boys to what was then my deceased body. I saw through her eyes, heard through her ears, and understood everything she knew and felt at the time. Yet I was only a bystander in her world. When confronted with this horrific predicament, this 12-year-old was as calm and reasonable as anyone could be. My sister is now okay. She had also fallen from the raft and became entangled in the same undertow, but she was wearing a life jacket and was thus safe. The other girls were also fine. Now it's up to me to save my father. These were her first thoughts. Then, as quickly as I'd been brought into my daughter's world, I was back to mine, standing above the river in the same location as before. "What do you want to do?" said the voice again. It inquired. Finally, I realized I had to pick between the icon in front of me of parenting my girls and the life I had just left. Or perhaps this new existence and life I knew was with my Heavenly Father, for I could sense His love flowing from a place up and to my left, right behind me. A love that reminded me of the serenity and satisfaction I had as a tiny child, being softly rocked in the arms of my mother at the end of a great day. This feeling of love, tranquility, and well-being was so overwhelming that I couldn't decide what to do. There was no coercion to choose this or that, nor was I encouraged to believe that one option was superior to the other. It was entirely up to me to resolve the situation. I knew how much my kids needed me and how much I loved them, so I returned somewhat reluctantly and did everything in my ability to raise them the best that I could. To convey my decision, I simply collected all of the information and emotions gathered and delivered it to my friend, who had never seen it before. "I wanted this," I said, referring to the emblem in front of me and everything it represented. Then I was informed, "You have to give everything you've got." This prompted another search for everything I had. It returned an empty result because my body was present and I was present. The words returned exactly the same, resulting in the same exact search. I was given information. A lot of it, but not in words, just before being ordered to give it my all again. It was explained to me that I had to choose to be in my body since no one was going to force me to be there. This information was imbued with a sense of urgency that a parent could have for a child who's in immediate danger. When I made the conscious decision to return to my body, The water raged around me again, clutching and tugging me down, but to no effect because I possessed the might of a locomotive. Nothing could prevent me from reaching the surface. When I arrived, I evacuated all the dirt in my lungs and exchanged it for a deep breath of life. My lungs were hurting so badly that I considered drowning. I fought the nearly overwhelming need to give up and believed I whispered or cried for aid when the young men in the little raft were only a few feet away. They were right next to me after just a few strokes of the oars, grabbing the rope on the side of the raft. I discovered I still had enough energy and swam alongside the raft, assisting it over the rapids to the bank. It required some effort to explain what had just happened, and there were some skeptics among the group. That is, until I informed them of what they were doing and, in some cases, thinking while I was underwater. Doubts were swiftly dispelled. The rest of our journey was wonderfully tranquil and rewarding. Seeing deer and other wildlife only a few feet away added to my experience. We arrived late at our destination and requested a ride home. My mom was worried about us. You know how mothers can be, don't you? My full-time employment was nearing the conclusion of my probationary period, so I needed to be there the next day. Although I could scarcely move, every cell in my body, from my head hair to my toes, was in excruciating pain. The anguish gradually receded over the next few days, leaving me with a certain understanding of many things I had not even imagined, and the opportunity to see my growth develop. I can attest to the veracity of this encounter, as can those who were on the river with me. They witnessed it. I can also attest to the fact that God exists. He loves us and is conscious of even the smallest details in our life and our planet. The gift of agency, the power to act on our own wants and engage with one another in the realm of their creations, is magnificent. I pray that we will be able to thank Him for our very existence and treat one another and His creations with the respect and care that they deserve.